How are we doing, guys? Welcome back to Barça Buzz. It is left winger discussion yet again. We have discussed this already with my friend Robbie, and we're going to discuss once again the left winger situation. Luis Diaz's name has returned again, but a new name has entered the discussion. A new name has entered the chat. In sort of the last sort of 48 hours or so, Rafael Leao is now getting mentioned as well, potentially. So we will discuss it in more detail. It looks like at the minute, Luis Diaz is still the favourite. And Rafael Leão has been considered and offered to the football club. We're not sure exactly when it was, whether it's before the Nations League final or not before the Nations League final. Who knows? But Rafael Leão has been offered to the club. The club isn't 100% convinced on Rafael Leão, but I'm not sure about Robbie. I take that as a fact of this is how, as Robbie has just said off air, Juan Garcia started in terms of there was no mention at all. Suddenly it gets mentioned, and then suddenly it becomes the talk of the town. And that feels to me the case with Rafael Leao, Robbie.
Yeah, hopefully, I think those two signings will be basically will guarantee you the best summer window a club can have, better than Real Madrid and better than Arsenal, who just signed three or four superstars. I actually think those two superstars will change this team completely. Like I said.
I think they're the two best signings Barca could possibly make, not just in those positions. In terms of, you asked me, in this whole market, obviously within reason, obviously the likes of other left wingers aren't on the market. But in terms of the realistic signings Barcelona could make, they are the two best possible ones. And what we can talk about first and foremost is we have spoken about Luis Diaz. We both aren't particularly keen on that, are we, Robbie?
Yeah, I agree. I think Luis Diaz should actually be the last name on every list, especially at that spending that kind of money on him. But yeah, I saw there are now Marcus Rashford, Nico Williams, Leao can appear on some lists for Barca journalists. So maybe we're going into the right direction.
Hopefully that is the case. I mean, there has already been talk from the Liverpool side of things on Luis Diaz that Liverpool don't want to sell, or Liverpool want a crazy fee if they are to sell. And hopefully, for our own sakes, that kind of maybe in the next couple of weeks might see that one sort of calm down a little bit in that kind of sense. But you mentioned Nico Williams and Marcus Rashford, and I think off air we kind of said that it feels like at the minute the news, certainly with Nico Williams especially, that feels like less and less likely. I think if that was going to become a reality, I think it would have been after the Nations League, after his performance against France and first half against Portugal. But that feels like one we're just not going to venture down again. In terms of Nico Williams and Marcus Rashford, again, it seems like a similar situation to Rafael Leao. He's offered himself to the club. In terms of not him specifically, but his representatives have offered themselves to the club. And again, it doesn't like one we've done anything with so far. But again, Marcus Rashford has been mentioned, but Nico Williams feels like very unrealistic there, Robbie.
Yeah, like I said in a space a few days ago, the Nico Williams release clause is actually a lie. Fabrizio Romano, I think, mentioned it. It says 50 million, but it came with a bit of packages and some bonuses here and there that actually make that clause a lot more expensive than it seems on paper. And about Marcus Rashford, I think Marcus Rashford is just Rafa Leao light version. Like half of Leao is what you get in Rashford. Runs in behind, associative play, touchline wing play. It's actually a bit worse than Leao, but you kind of have the same profile right there. But yeah, like I said, and I will always say it, for the past few seasons, Leao is a gem hiding in plain sight because he's been available all this time and we should have been after him since last season, but I don't think it's too late now, so we should make everything after we finish the Juan Garcia deal to make the reality happen and get Leo as soon as possible.
Exactly. I think as well, something to mention too is the fact that Juan Garcia and Rafael Leao, in terms of Juan Garcia, has got a lovely range of passing in terms of especially, cutting across his body in terms of playing cross fielders across the left wing. And I look at that and think, ooh, if he had Rafinha or Rafael Leao running on those, I just think that's an extra dimension to this Barcelona build-up as well.
Yeah, and more on that, I think those two transfers actually send a message that the club is ready to take risk when when there is performance, there will always be rewards. Like we got the domestic treble, and the president going into the market and signing two of the best players available for each position respectively puts actually some, it's a message to the coach that if you're doing the right things, I will always back you up in the market and give you what you need. But then again, I don't think any club will have a better transfer window than Barcelona if both Rafael Leao and Juan Garcia will come at this club.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And let's discuss Rafael Leao's profile in more detail, as you have alluded to there, Robbie, in terms of, I think, first and foremost, what I really like about Rafael Leao is the fact that he can be Rafinha and Jamal cover. Because I felt last season, especially with Lamine, we were far too reliant on Lamine's 1v1 and creative qualities. I think Rafael Leao can recreate that. Maybe not to the same extent as a Lamine Yamal, but he's probably second or third best at that particular aspect of forward play, I think, in the world. I think Lamine is number one by quite a distance when it comes to 1v1 dribbling and creative qualities. But for me, Rafael Leao was also up there. And when it comes to the running in behind and playing a little bit more narrow, like a Rafinha, Rafael Leao can do that as well. And that's what really appeals to me with Rafael Leao signing, is the fact that it's almost two signings in one, in terms of last season, for me, Lamine and Rafinha play far too many minutes for different reasons. Lamine, because he's just at the start of his career. Rafinha, because he's coming towards the prime stroke, maybe sort of towards the end of his prime, maybe now next season. I feel that's a real big selling point with Rafael Leao, is the fact that he can recreate both roles, and he is such a versatile player in that regard.
Yes, if you want to talk about Leo, you definitely have to mention that his gravity is actually incredible. His ability, we saw even when he came on the bench for the first 5 minutes, he instantly attracted three players at the same time. Completely took Lamine Yamal out of the game because he had to focus on getting back on defense and helping Oscar Mingueza, or I think it was Zubimendi at some point, the right center mid, to help in defense. And Rafa Leao, as a straight line runner and carrier with the ball, he's an unstoppable force. When you give him the ball deep, he can actually win you 10 to 15 to 20 meters. When you actually leave him alone, like in a 1v1 situation, down the wing or even through the center, if he gets the ball and he has time and space to carry it. So I think that, like you said, with Rafinha, you don't have that kind of gravity when you give him the ball. Like, of course, he can finish better than Leo, in my opinion, and feel the and smell the space better, especially in the box. And maybe Yamal can find him easier. But the way Rafa Leao basically outplays the whole system, because you need to focus three players on Lamine Yamal, but then again you leave Rafael alone in 1v1 situations that basically means you're getting killed left and right. Now imagine having both Rafael on the left, and Lamine Yamal on the right, and Dani Olmo through the center with Lewandowski. You cannot play your defense that wide, because it creates so many pockets and half spaces through the center that Pedri and Frankie, or in that kind of system that Hansi Flick, everyone can get a goal with Leao and with Lamine on both on the left and on the right.
I totally agree. I totally agree, and it gives us so many new avenues. I think it's the fact that Leao can also play up front as well if needed, as a false nine, which also adds an extra dimension if we want to recreate something similar to Paris Saint-Germain. Not specifically in terms of style of play, but in terms of system itself. It gives you so many different options, because we know Lewandowski will be 37, I think, at the start of the season, and you just don't know what will happen at 37. Whether a big injury could happen, sudden drop off in form that we sometimes see with players when they sort of hit sort of their mid-30s. And I'm not saying it's going to happen, but anything could happen at that kind of age. So, having a different option there as well, it's at number 9, and the fact that Leao is so good at so many different angles, the fact that it just adds so many different things to our attack in that kind of regard. And, we have mentioned there about Nico Williams' release clause, but I think something else that's worth mentioning is the fact that Rafael Leao's price tag, to me, I'm not sure if I'd imagine you probably agree with this, Robbie, in terms of the quoted price of 70 million euros to Bayern Munich. That is insanely cheap. I genuinely use the words insanely cheap. I can't believe how cheap that is, to get someone who could be, in 12 months' time in the proper system, could be the best left winger in the world. I genuinely do believe that.
Yeah, like let's be for real. In a transfer market that Modric or Anthony goes for 100 and 110 million euros to get Rafael for 70 million, who is top three wingers in the world because it's left wingers in the world because it's Mbappe, Vinicius, and Leao. I think that's a steal. It's a steal even for 90 million because you know what kind of player you get. You know what kind of force you get. When you look to spend more than 70 million, you look to say, okay, we have to spend 70 million. Let's see what weapons this guy brings. And Rafael brings you straight line carrying through the left, which you had in Balde, but is not enough for a player to sustain the whole flank and carry the whole flank. It gives you uh, them danger in transitions, which our system is completely relying on danger on transitions because Hansi likes to use his wingers as transition weapons. The wingers don't drop back as much as Arsenal wingers drop back because you leave them higher up to punish you faster and quicker. And of course, Rafael gives you runnings in behind, which Lamine Yamal and Dani Olmo and Pedri love to play with. And I think spending 70 to 90 million is just a reasonable price to get a steal from a basically best player at the qualities and attributes I mentioned. Because Rafa Leao is that guy, and he will be that guy for 2 3 years because his his gameplay isn't reliable only on pace and power because he's very smart too in his positioning and in the way he reserves his gas tank basically to not to go on sprint mode and to press only for when it's important and maybe to play at a lower gear when it's not important and manage himself to sustain the whole effort which his effort is incredible. Like I said, sprinting up and down the pitch with the ball for 90 minutes is it's impossible, so he knows he has to make that 3 or 4 or 5 times a game and then take it a little bit slow when he can and the right opportunity is not there. So like I said, his gameplay is actually being more smart than only pace and power.
It's a totally unique skill set he's got. I mean, most of the time, when you kind of see one attribute or the other kind of thing in terms of a player's really good ball to feet or a player's really good in terms of, as you say, in terms of having the power just to drive past players or make runs in behind. And Leao has all those qualities combined, as you say, mate, and that's what makes it such a great opportunity. That's why, for me, his ceiling is so high. And you mentioned there about Alejandro Balde, and something that interested me, and maybe the one thing that maybe slightly doubt, when I say slightly doubt, I've always been very much, all in on this kind of signing in terms of Rafael Leao, in terms of that wow signing to take us up the other level, and I don't think there's a better player for that. And what really interests me on Sunday in terms of the Nations League final was Nuno Mendes was at left back, and I wouldn't say he's exactly the same profile as Alejandro Balde, but he's probably one of the closest profiles in terms of the elite fullbacks at this moment in time, in terms of being able to hold the width and drive past players like a winger. It was the compatibility between Nuno Mendes and Rafael Leao. At times, Leao would stay wide, Mendes would come inside, invert a little bit more. Then you see Mendes hold the width and Leao play more sort of a second striker. And it just seemed to, these just both seemed to, it looked like they played sort of 70 games together, never mind a couple of games to Portugal and, a half against Spain. And it was really interesting to me seeing that compatibility going forward. And another thing to mention as well is that everyone talks about Leao's work rate off the ball. I've not seen a wing, if you like, defend better against Lamine Yamal this season than what that Portugal left wing dealt with Lamine Yamal. And it got better when Rafael Leao came on. I thought Leao, he maybe wasn't pressing so much, but in terms of he was really holding the compact shape out of possession in terms of his positioning was what I was really looking at actually from Rafael Leao. Not just his on-ball work, but actually what he was doing off the ball. And he stopped Mingueza overlapping, and he didn't give Lamine Yamal any support. And I thought that wing, in terms of Nuno Mendes and Rafael Leao, did a superb job defensively as well on Sunday. That really stood out to me in that kind of regard. And that makes me think that Balde and Leao will be very compatible as well, especially with a full preseason behind them.
Yeah, like I said, the narrative of Leo being lazy out of possession is just it avalanched through basically from nothing because yes, he may appear lazy at sometimes, but like I said, the man runs up and down the pitch with the ball for basically 10 minutes. That's just incredible effort to get the ball from deep from your maybe half line and get it in the 16-yard box just in an instant click. It's something that necessitates a lot of effort. So of course you may appear lazy at sometimes, but on the Nuno Mendes and Rafael Leao topic, I think it was a quote by Lionel Scaloni that the better players will always be good alongside better players. Like it's not about chemistry and everything. When you play two good players alongside each other, they will automatically get better. Both will get better by playing and compensating from each other. So although Nuno Mendes has better attacking traits than Alejandro Balde, like ball striking, for example, because he strikes the ball better and maybe finds the although this is a delicate topic that I will maybe talk in future episodes, well, Balde will actually profit from Rafa Leao the same way Leao will profit from Balde, because Balde knows won't be the only guy that needs to hold the wing, that needs to carry the ball through the center and break the lines. He's not the only guy that needs to be up and down all the times and on through the left flank. And Rafa Leao knows he has somebody that can overlap for him. That we saw his chemistry and link up play with Teo Hernandez, with Nuno Mendes. Teo Hernandez scored a lot of goals from Rafa Leao assists. Nuno Mendes, there were some combinating plays and associative play between Nuno Mendes and Rafael Leao, like you said. Like it appeared they play 70 games per season, not only one. And Rafael Leao will push Alejandro Balde to an even better level that Balde will undoubtedly, in my opinion, with Rafael Leao start the 2026 World Cup campaign, in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think just to finish off with, it's a bit more of an emotive point, this one, but I think it's a relevant point anyway. We talk about sort of Barcelona coded players. And for me, Rafael Leao, especially in terms of Barcelona coded left wingers, really fits the bill in terms of, you compared to like a Neymar or Ronaldinho. In terms of the, I'm not saying he's at that level yet or anything like that, but in terms of the profile of the player, the fact that he's a right-footed, left-sided player, can kind of cut inside, has the superstar qualities, has a lot of commercial interest as well. It just feels, from an emotive point of view, it just feels right in that kind of sense. I just feel with the link even being mentioned, the fact that Rafael Leao's name is even being mentioned now, when sort of 48 hours ago it hadn't been mentioned for like 6 months, probably in the January window, very briefly. It just feels interesting to me. The fact that it's even been mentioned. We mentioned it about Juan Garcia. It started off like this, and maybe we're getting a bit overexcited. But to me, Juan Laporta, we know, has always been a massive, massive fan of Rafael Leao, and the fact he was at the game as well on Sunday, it won't have changed his view. It only furthered his view for me. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. But I feel that's a very relevant point as well, Robbie.
Yeah, another interesting topic that I wanted to address on Rafa Leao and why I'm so demanded on him coming here. There is a goal like he scored this season against Real Madrid in the Champions League when they won 3-1 at the Bernabeu. Rafa Leao actually received the ball with his back at the goal, created separation with his back. You shot the ball inside the box, which is a crowded place, everybody knows. And the fact that a winger can play with his back against the goal and create separation with enough time to release the shot, and then I think it was Morata or Tijani Reinders that scored the tap in, but it was a tough, tough, tough shot for Courtois to save and only deflected in front of him, which is a bad save for any goalkeeper inside the 6-yard box. Is evidence of the pure fact that Rafael can play as a nine or as a shadow striker in a Hansi Flick system. And imagine having Olmo, Rafinha, Rafael, Lamin all on the same pitch at the same time, because that could happen in a easier type of game that maybe like you said you need to rest Lewandowski, who is 37 going into the next season. So Rafael can play as a striker, can play as a left winger, can play as a shadow striker, and can move Rafinha to the right to rest Lamine Yamal. So you basically bought a player for 70 million that can rest every position in the front three. Like, it doesn't get better than this, in my opinion.
I agree, and it's the fact that if it gives Lamine a rest as well, and make sure that Lamine in terms of longevity, we protect that as much as possible. I think that's worth 70 million alone. To be honest, the fact that you're protecting your biggest asset, the biggest asset in world football, you're protecting him from getting burnout or picking up injuries from playing so much football and etc etc and fatigue and all these different factors. It's worth its weight in gold in that kind of sense. This kind of signing. And yeah, when you watch Leao as well in games like that, Real Madrid and on Sunday, he genuinely looks like a senior player playing in academy football in terms of size and power. It's mind blowing in terms of how much Spain struggled against him on Sunday.
Yeah, it's basically a cheat code with Rafael Leao. You actually think this is a 23-year old player playing with under 16 or under 17. It's basically, you look at him and it says, "Man, this is too easy for him. Like, go get him in the right age group," in my opinion.
It's one of those. It's like when you're playing FIFA as well. It's like you need to go up a difficulty level. It felt like that on Sunday. It was a ridiculous performance. But Robbie, we'll leave it there, mate. We've spoken 20 minutes. I could speak all day on a player like Rafael Leao. He's one of my favourite players to watch in Europe. I'm sure he's one of your favourites as well. And what an amazing player. And the fact that we're even seeing his name mentioned is great. Of course, Luis Diaz looks like the favourite at this moment in time. But as we say, Juan Garcia, it started out like this. But this video has been to talk about not necessarily Rafael Leao is or isn't going to sign for Barcelona. It's the qualities Rafael Leao can offer to Barcelona, as you probably can see. Leave a comment in the description down below as well. That very much helps us with the algorithm. And hit the like button as well and subscribe button as well as we hit our road to 5K. There's plenty more videos to come up as well. For myself and Robbie, we have got a Juan Garcia video in the drafts. We're waiting just for the confirmation on the signing, and that will be coming straight out as soon as it's confirmed that he's signed. And we'll leave it there anyway, Robbie. Big thanks to you as always, mate. Robbie's still there.
Oh
Anyway,
yeah.
no worries, man. No worries. We'll leave it there, guys. Big thanks for watching. Hit that like button and subscribe button, and make sure you follow Robbie on Twitter as well. We'll leave the description. Sorry, we'll leave his Twitter in the description down below. Big thanks for watching, guys, and we will see you later. Thanks, guys.